Can Europe survive without Russian gas and oil? It's a very topical subject because, of course, we're on the verge in a matter of days or weeks or months, but we definitely will have a problem with the gas and oil supply. And I'm afraid that we rely in a very large measure on the Russian supply. So it's not a joke. We will have an open discussion. I'll show you a few slides with facts and figures. Not a real presentation, just a few facts, just to so that we are all on the same page. Then we will have a few exchange a few discussion questions with the audience, and then we'll carry on with a few more slides. So first of all, we'll be talking about EU energy dependency on Russia. Then we'll take a break with a few questions. Then we'll talk about renewables and nuclear. And here, Renzo, hopefully we can count on your help. And then we'll come to some conclusions, and we'll have Q&A in the middle so that we have ample room for exchanging ideas, questions, etc. Okay? We see a spider web of pipelines converging on Europe, just natural gas pipelines. Of course, on top of that, we have oil pipelines, but these are just the gas pipelines. But quite a few, but if you look, most of them come from Russia. And the most controversial ones, like Nord Stream 1 and 2, come straight from Russia into the heart of Europe, straight into Germany. And then may be distributed to different places or not, but Germany, the biggest economy in Europe. We have a few pipelines going from North Africa to Italy, to Spain. One, notably the Maghreb Europe, is not functioning at the moment because there is, I wouldn't call it a conflict, but there's a disagreement between Algeria and Morocco. And so Algeria stopped sending gas through the pipeline, and Morocco was going to block it anyway. So there is no pipeline there. So we have a few more pipelines further tap, and that's about it. So if all these pipelines stop gas and oil, there'll be consequences. Now, what kind of consequences? The EU energy mix is as follows. We have oil and petroleum products, 34.5%, natural gas, 23.7%, solid fossil fuels, which is a euphemism for the dirty coal, or mostly coal, 10.5%. Then the virtuous or nearly virtuous nuclear energy, 12.7%, and then renewables, 17.4%. Our gas dependency on Russia is 41%. The total dependency of all fuels is 24.4%. Is just under a quarter, was a quarter which is extraordinarily difficult to replace. And we may see why. Russia is the main source of oil and gas and coal. And according to the Eurostat information, the stability of the EU's energy supply is threatened by if a high proportion of imports are concentrated among relatively few external partners. And that was Eurostat in 2019, commenting on one of its statistics. Again, Russia, 41% of gas comes from Russia, 27% of oil, 47% of coal. Coal, we shouldn't be too worried unless we live in Germany, because Germany is probably the biggest user of coal, and Poland, both not very virtuous. But yes, we still use, believe it or not, we still use coal to this very day. To use a rather strange comment made by the late Senator John McCain, Russia is a gas station masquerading as a country. He also, another version says, Russia is a gas station with nukes. So this is a rather worrying statement because it's not much of a country, but a lot of nukes. over 5,000 warheads, according to the latest estimates. Not all is lost, because just looking at the oil reserves in thousands of millions of barrels, Russia is not the biggest, with 107.8. The next one is Iraq, but the biggest one is, let's say, Venezuela with 303.8. So not all is lost, but it's not an easy situation. Have any questions so far, or any remarks?
I do have one remark. Sorry, Piotr.
Okay, Renzo, go ahead.
I was not quick in raising my hand. No, I just have a remark about the source of the gas. You mentioned correctly that the European dependency on Russian gas is about 46, depending on the month you measure, but it's about almost 50% of our demand is coming from Russia. We also should understand that worldwide, the producer of gas is basically United States, with about 1,000 billion of cubic meters in terms of production per year, and followed by Russia, which is about 638 billion cubic meters. And then all the other countries which are following in list is Iran, China, Qatar, Canada, Australia, and Saudi Arabia. And then we come to Norway and Algeria. So most of the countries that have that are gas producer in the world are not close to Europe. We have only Russia, and then with a fifth, less than the fifth, a sixth of the production of Russia, we have Norway. So even when we think about changing the source, so outsourcing to some other producer, gas producer, we will have a geographical problem. And that this is another point that we have to consider in that one.
Absolutely. You make a very good point that there are other producers, but they are all very far, and we have no pipelines with them. Exactly. And we do have a pipeline with Algeria, for instance, but it's one small pipeline used to the maximum. But then we come to another problem which we have in Europe, is lack of total improvidence, is that this gas comes to Spain, and it's already insufficient for the Spanish use, because they'll have to use tankers. But even if we had enough gas in Spain, you cannot go north, because there's only 3 strands going through the Western Pyrenees. We're going to build in the Eastern Pyrenees through Catalonia another pipeline, but because it was expensive and because they felt no need for it, it was abandoned. So we don't have another pipeline. Yeah. And then we come to the LNG. Sorry, you were trying to say something.
No, I was just saying that from a supplier standpoint, we are really constrained. We cannot just pick and choose. This is my point.
Absolutely, you're right. And there's another element with LNG. It's tankers are very scarce at the moment. It's very hard to find tankers. Even if you find the gas, it's very hard to find tankers because they're all very busy. So even if you find tankers and they are expensive, once we get to Europe, already the European facilities are fully used. And the biggest economy in Europe, again in Providence, doesn't have any LNG regasification facilities. They're going to build them in 2 years, perhaps 4 years in the future.
I can tell you, we have the same situation, by the way.
Yeah, well, but you don't even have nuclear, and Germany soon will not have nuclear. And great news, though, we have spare capacity in Portugal and Spain. There's good spare capacity. There are regasification plants which are sitting idle. There are tankers, but we still have no pipelines to send them north. So yes, Spain can be very well served, and Portugal, but not the rest of Europe, because we cannot send it north. So yes, LNG is a nightmare. Anybody else?
No, if I may have another quick comment, which should be also interesting to understand the gas problem. What is used for gas? How we do use in Europe gas? And this is something that could be interesting in understanding which kind of alternatives we may use for that gas. Well, the usage is different from country to country. In Italy, for example, I wouldn't say the vast majority, but a huge percentage of the gas used in Italy or consumed in Italy is to produce electricity. This is not the case in France. This is not the case in Germany, and not the case in Switzerland or in other countries. So it's important also to understand how do we use in Europe gas, because if it comes to heating houses, so final consumer is one thing. Is it used to produce electricity to feed the grid is another stuff, is another topic. So it's important to have everything clear. The problem is how to the supply, from where, the amount, the percentage, and the final usage. We do about that, if we can get rid of or not. Sorry, Piotr, but I just wanted to...
absolutely. These are very good points. For instance, gas is used in Spain, is used for heating, and I'm sure it is in Italy, and lots of European countries use for heating, and it's vital. Well, in the UK, it's used for heating. It's absolutely vital because people would freeze to death. They don't have no other heating. It's used for in steel, production of steel. It's used in production of tiles, ceramics. Whatever high temperatures are required, gas is a better fuel than, for instance, electricity, which is more expensive, and others. So it's very hard to replace gas. It's certainly not at short notice. Anybody else? Any other questions or remarks, or shall we carry on with the facts and the figures? So let's come to the hopeful solutions. Renewables and nuclear. So let's come to the virtuous or nearly virtuous fuels, and the ones above all, apart from being virtuous from an environmental point of view, the most important thing is that they are our own. Nobody can cut us off from these fuels. We're not paying an increasing amount of money for these fuels, because the problem with gas, apart from the availability, and oil and coal, apart from the availability, they can be extraordinarily expensive. They're getting more expensive by the day, as we see when we try to fill up or buy a bottle of gas. The renewable capacity in Europe is 43% hydro, so hydroelectric production, but this is endangered by the climate change that some countries like Spain, which rely to a certain percentage of its energy production on hydro, it doesn't rain, or not enough. Switzerland is short on rain. So it's not so simple. 26% is solar, which is very nice, but it could be infinitely more. I'm always complaining about that, because why don't we use solar, particularly in the Mediterranean countries like Spain, Italy, Portugal, Greece, they're blessed with sunshine. In Spain, the estimate is what, 2,500 hours a year of beautiful sunshine, and we use a fraction of what we could be using. And wind. Again, wind could be increased tremendously. So this is the existing mix, but it's only a paltry 7.4% of the total EU energy mix, which means that for the remaining 2/3, we rely on fossil fuels, because the remaining bit is nuclear, which we will look at in a moment. These are the installed capacity trends, and it's very satisfying seeing how it's growing and growing and growing, except this is hiding something. This table is hiding something which, in fact, is not very positive, is that the growth it exists, but it's terribly slow, because the next table will show us that in 2020, the growth of renewable generation capacity in Europe was only 6%. Okay, 2020 is a special year because it was with COVID, etc. But North America managed 8.2, even with Trump, they managed 8.2% of growth. Eurasia managed 6%, but Asia managed 15%. That's mainly China. Oceania, 18.5%. Well, that's probably mainly Australia. But then Africa, 5%, South America, 4.1%, Central America, 2.1%, Middle East, 5.2%. But we only one little step ahead of countries which definitely have development problems like Africa or Middle East, which is half of the time at war. So why can't we manage more? These are okay, you can look at it for a minute. The renewable energy in 2020 by country, the very good position of Sweden and Finland, and then decreasing down to Malta, which is only 10%, Sweden the maximum 60.1. But let's say the EU average is 22.1, but let's say France 19.1, but France has nuclear. So yes, France is perhaps a bit of a laggard when it came to renewables last year, but they have a lot of relatively clean nuclear. Germany 19.3, sort of, they've obviously set low requirements. So yeah, they met the requirements. But for instance, Poland 60.1, yes, well, the requirements must have been extraordinarily low to meet it because they use a tremendous amount of coal and they don't invest much in renewables. Going back to a bit of history, the vastness of Russia's energy reserves became apparent in the 1960s. That's from a story in Deutsche Welle. The continuation of the story is that as these energy reserves were discovered, the German-made pipes formed the basis of many Russian pipelines. Because the Soviets were short of steel and the high technology needed to produce these pipelines, Germany provided the pipelines. In exchange, we received cheaper gas from the Soviet Union, and they keep receiving to this day. But the special relationship started a long time ago. And now we come to nuclear, but with all of this happening just a few days ago, Germany still decided, that was March 8th, after Ukraine was invaded, Germany still decided not to extend the nuclear power station, but it still has functioning, the 2 or 3 power stations still functioning, not to extend it past the end of the year, aiming to build new LNG terminals in 2024, but thank you very much if you're still around in 2024. But that's a questionable issue. Nuclear energy in the UN 2020, we can see here who are the big producers. 13 countries produce nuclear energy, 14 countries don't. Among them, fairly big ones like Poland, Italy, Denmark, Portugal, Austria, etc., etc. The biggest producer is France, way ahead of everybody else, 5-6 times more than anybody else in Europe. And this is why they can afford to be a bit slower on the other energies. We can have a look at some of the figures, which is 13 members generated 25% of the use total electricity production or total EU electricity production through thanks to nuclear. And France is ahead of everybody else with 52%, when Germany 9%, Spain 9%, and Sweden 7%. Again, the nuclear reactors in France way ahead at 67% with the percentage of electricity generated. Then going down, Slovakia 54, Hungary 46, Bulgaria 41, down to the laggard Netherlands 3%, not to mention the ones who, unfortunately, for them at the moment at least, don't have any. So we'll take another break if you agree. Danny already was asking to speak. Go ahead, Danny, please.
Thank you, Piotr. My personal opinion is I prefer renewable energy like solar panels and wind energy. That's my opinion. Gas is okay because gas it's better for the climate. Like when you see what happened in coals, that's not good for the climate. When you read the story I'm writing for about China, they are using coals, but every day in Peking, or in Shanghai, there is a smog. Really, it's a terrible smog. So that's not okay. What about those wind turbines? One wind turbine is deliver electricity for 5,000 families. One. So, and on the coast in Belgium, they are busy to create an island where they're going to put all wind turbines, and it would be possible for having electricity for all the people in Belgium. So I don't see a problem in wind energy and solar panels. That's my opinion. All the rest, gas, okay, but we want to have it. We want to take it from somewhere else, not from Russia. There are maybe there are other options. What the options are, I don't know. Just so please, you may have your say. The floor is yours.
I think we'll ask Renzo to answer this one, but let's see if Helder has a question which is similar, and then we will take. So go ahead, Helder.
Well, I don't have a question itself, but there is an interesting question in the chat that you should take it if somebody might be able to answer it. But my remark that I would like to make is that the renewable energy is fantastic, but they are not produced all 24 hours. Then we don't have the technology to store the energy yet. Then that's why we need the gas to compensate, or coal, or nuclear, or whatever other alternative. And as you stated, Pierre, and very well, since that we don't have immediate alternative because we don't have the infrastructure built up. Even if we want to build up to connect the pipelines for gas or whatever other kind of energy, or if we want to build up nuclear plants, then might take time. Then we are running out of alternative. For instance, in Europe, I think that there's schist gas, and not, and environment reasons they are not exploring that. Also, the funny fact that I remember I was involved in a project in South America, then they had to burn half of the gas production because they were not able to handle all the gas that was able to extract. They have a chimneys only burning gas the whole time. Probably that is not very good for the environment either. Also, I recall a project, I think that was a project meant in the north of Morocco or some other North African countries, to take in the desert to put a huge farm of solar panels. Mm-hmm. That could be an alternative, but at the end, the big German company that was involved withdrew from that project. Yes. Then I didn't understood at that time why they withdrew from that, because that could be also an interesting alternative. And well, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Hilder and Danny. So I'm sure, Renzo, you have some replies to that.
Well, yes, let me start from one comment from Danny. It was about the gas, which is good for environment. Well, not really. Gas is one step to decarbonize from coal. So we can switch from coal to gas, because gas is cleaner than coal in terms of powder, in terms of wastes. You have to understand that coal has a huge amount of waste. When you burn coal, you get the ash that you have to get rid of. Gas is going into the atmosphere, so you don't even realize that there is a waste, but there is a huge amount of CO2 and NOx that goes out in the atmosphere, which are really impacting the environment. So gas is not good. It's a step in. Second point is about getting gas not from Russia. Well, I understand the political situation that we have right now, but we also have to understand that the economic war about gas started well before the war, the military war. So there was economic war which started in 2020, well, end of 2020, beginning of 2021, as soon as the long-term contract with Gazprom came to an end. So the 10 years contract expired in 2020. So starting from 2021, they started to have the Nord Stream 2 approved and activated, and then a real economic war started at the time. We didn't realize that, but if you look at the prices of gas, you realize that the peak in the price of gas were exactly the same dates where the statement against Nord Stream 2 were made. So this is another story. About renewables, yes, that's good. Renewables are good, are clean. We can handle them. Well, clean depends, but they are quite clean. Let's put it quite clean, because all the material that are used to make the solar panels are not really clean at all. But fine, consider that those are clean. But a big problem was raised also by Adar. There is no, all those, let's say, all the renewable are not continuous, are intermittent. We have stagionality, so winter and summer. We have weather condition. In UK, this last summer, we had no wind at all. So they had to burn a lot of gas and coal instead of getting power from wind. There was a long period of calm wind, and the power was really down. As said by Piotr, we had, and we are having, unfortunately, a long period, dry period in the southern part of Europe. Italy, Spain, Switzerland, and Austria are facing a drought. So we do not have water, we do not have snow in the mountains. Next summer, we will have a huge problem with hydroelectric, because there is no water into the dams, into the artificial lakes. So renewables are good, but we have to handle them. We have to manage them. So we cannot, from an overall grid standpoint, we have to rely on renewable and on local renewable for some, how can you say, local usage like houses or other things. But we need to integrate the different mixes. So with, as done in France, for example, or in Sweden. Sweden is the second country in Europe which has a huge nuclear power. Now Finland is following, Slovenia as well, as you mentioned. And all those countries have a mix, not just relying on nuclear only. Well, France is mainly an exception, because France made the decision years ago. But all the other countries, Nordic countries and Slovenia, are trying to use a mix between renewables, wind, solar in Sweden, not really, mostly in the southern part of Europe. But what is important is not to try to focus on one single source. Otherwise, we will come back to the same problem that we are having right now with gas from Russia.
Thank you, Renzo. Yes, that's a very clear explanation. For renewables, let me just add one remark. Yes, they are intermittent, but a solution has been found. It's not a simple solution, it's not a cheap solution, but very large batteries, the mega packs, for instance, provided by Tesla, they can provide a few hours. They cannot provide days, but they can provide a few seconds if it's for frequency, like in Australia, to regulate frequency, or a few hours to cover the peaks, which can replace whole gas-powered stations, simply because you provide the 2-3 peak hours during the day after recharging with renewables the batteries, and that's enough, because some power stations only work a few hours a day when they absolutely need it. That's at the peak times. The problem is dealing with the crest, when there is the greatest need for electricity, when it's cold or when it's hot, and when people are cooking. There are some solutions. I see here that Ben has raised his hand, and then we have Naidu. And also, sorry, I'll take first the question from Maria Emilia Burgos, who asked a question on the chat. Do you believe that this current conflict situation will further accelerate and encourage the use of renewable energies? Well, this is a bit the silver lining of a very, very bad situation. There is great hope that because the prices are going up so fast, making the renewables very cheap in comparison, because there's a huge danger of non-home produced energies that they will lack, like gas, imported oil, imported coal. There is a hope that something you can put on your roof, something you can put in a field outside your city, in your own country, at least will give you some energy, something to go about. So yes, and also psychologically, it's hoped that a lot of people are being shocked into realizing I'll invest a few thousand euros in panels for my roof, and it'll give me at least some relief from the huge electricity bills which are coming, which are hitting us at the moment. For instance, in Spain, because of the huge electricity bills, there will be tremendous increases in Spain, practically unlimited, because you don't know where they're going to finish. Installers are very busy, and they're saying their only limit is they don't have the staff to install enough solar panels. There's so much demand that they have. And so far, the roofs, the beautiful sunny roofs of Spain were completely empty. There was nothing on it because nobody was using solar panels. Do you have anything to add to this, Renzo?
Yes, as one very short comment here. Yes, solar panels on the roof or their houses are okay. Even if I tried to put on the roof of my home, by the way, the solar panel, the problem is that when it comes to economics, during the day it's fine, I can use this. But if I want to use also the batteries, as you mentioned, are extremely expensive. So if I compare the cost of the system, not just the panel, but the system that should provide me the full coverage over the 24 hours or over the 36 days, 65 days over a year, the cost will skyrocket. So also in terms of LCOE or this discussion on cost of energy, there is a big mistake in using the LCOE, but this is a different story. I don't want to open this topic here. So yes, it's fine. We have to use as much as we can where is possible. We have to use renewable energies. No discussion about that. This is a good thing to do. What I don't want to go through is to use photovoltaic panels and wind, eolic energies for everything. This is not the right thing to do. We need to have a mix, because we cannot use the photovoltaic to produce energy for the tile production, as you mentioned before, or for the steel production. This is not something that we can do it. So we can use wind energy to produce hydrogen by using the electrolytic process. Fine, it's very expensive. It's not easy to do, but it's at least it's not depending on the continuity of the wind. So when we have wind, we have energy, we can produce hydrogen. Fine. We have to balance the mix. So I don't want to say that renewable are evil, but I don't even want to say that nuclear or other sources are evil. So we need to find the right balance. This is my point.
Yes, indeed. That's the point is that to have a baseline, and the point is to have for which nuclear is most useful, also to have a good mix of energies. But this is something absolutely essential to understand. Ben, you had a question.
Thank you. I was interested in the question written in the chat about thorium-based nuclear power. And my own question would be, what is the fastest way to get rid of the Russian gas dependency we have now? Because some EU countries are dependent for almost half of their energy. And Putin would only need to threaten to close the gas pipes, and then there is a big problem. So what would be the fastest, best way to turn it off?
I think that will be quite difficult to get rid of Russian gas. And not because it's Russian, but it's because it's gas. And our economy is depending on gas. No discussion about that. So I am afraid that putting the question in terms of getting rid of Russian gas is the wrong question. We should try to ask a question: how can we decrease our dependency on gas? I've seen also the IEA solution to get rid of Russian gas by 30% by the end of the year. There are a 10 points plan, which are all, let's say, common sense actions. The first one is do not buy gas anymore from Russia, which is quite how to get rid, do not buy. Okay, that's fine, it's clear. But then how can I substitute the gas? So there are 10 topics, 10 plan in the IEA, International Energy Agency, which are common sense, but really ambitious. One point is to increase the amount.
I'd like to stop you there because there's the next thing I want to come
okay.
to. That's part of the conclusion. This is that you were talking, Ben, about the dependency. Yes, Lithuania depends on 90% on Russian energy, gas and oil. Slovakia at nearly 60%, and then going down to Cyprus at nearly nothing. So yeah, the rates of dependency are pretty staggering in some countries. It's going to be a tall order to get rid of it. But it doesn't mean it's impossible. And frankly, my point is not so much whether it's possible or not possible. We won't have a choice. I think we are in a place where we don't really have a choice. I think as a matter, we may have days, we may have months, but we don't really have a choice. So, but there was a very good question, and this question is really for you, Renzo.
On the thorium.
About thorium, indeed. Would you like to comment on this?
Talk much about thorium-based nuclear power. Is it realistic? Yes, it is. And there are any drawbacks. Oh, well, one small drawback is that we have to believe in it and we have to invest. So this is the real drawback. If we do not invest in that kind of thorium-based nuclear power, we will never achieve. And in terms of, let's say, environment drawbacks, no, there is no drawback. Because the thorium-based are designed, conceptually designed also to burn all the actinides, all the, let's say, the transuranium products, byproducts of the fission. So they are much cleaner than the current reactors. And there is already one or two now, I think, demonstration reactors which are working on that. And guess what? One is in Russia and one is in China. Europe gave up. Europe and the States gave up in the end of the 60s because of military reason. They were not suitable for submarines. Europe didn't invest in that. So this is the real drawback.
Improvidence and penny pinching, our usual problem, and that's why we are.
Absolutely correct.
With Russia holding us by the short and curly. We will have to take Naidu because we really, I'm sorry, we kept you waiting so long. Please, Naidu, go ahead.
No problem. No problem. It's absolutely fine. As far as the renewable energy is concerned, so my point I wanted to make was with respect to the wind energy, especially this the wind turbines. And I was also very fascinated when I did a bit of Google and find out that it takes almost €1 million to construct one or to set up one. And then it can heat or light up almost 300 families or houses in a village. And I live in a small village where we have only 2,000 families. So I was like, why don't we have 2 or 3 windmills here in the neighborhood? And then and of course, because it's a village, it is surrounded by the farmers, and they don't want a windmill in their farm because this will distract the nature and especially the birds. So this could be one of the biggest challenges if this windmill initiative has been rolled out across Europe in a large scale. I think the only way to go forward may be to do it on a sea farm or sea wind farm or something like that. But yeah, this was one of the points. Second point I wanted to add was, sorry to say, I come from India. And then I have seen the worst in the Second World War. And then people have moved on so easily and made such a closer ties with the biggest rivalry nation, Russia, that today almost half of the Europe's energy crisis or energy and the wheat and the sunflower oil depends on the exports from or imports from Russia. And I was wondering, I mean, are we discussing too short term? Because today I hear something like Russia is selling its gas with a discounted price, and it is offering nations who cannot produce enough, like India. And though I don't like it, but Indian government is even thinking of maybe taking this offer. So if not Europe, they will find somebody else who is ready to buy. What are we gaining here? And are we going to continue to keep Russia aside with us or away from us, not only in terms of gas, but also in terms of wheat? They are the largest wheat producers and exporters. Are we going to keep them away forever? And if it is not forever, then why are we talking about these temporary solutions or temporary issues, which is just pinned off because of this war?
Well, we're getting into geopolitics here, and we've discussed during the past two webinars the situation with Ukraine and Russia. But just to put it in a nutshell, you said that in Europe, former enemies got together and all is forgiven. Indeed, Germany, Russia, and the rest of Europe have made peace, have joined a union, not with Russia, not the Soviet Union, which stood to its side as always, but the rest of Europe has joined in one single European Union. And because things happened in the past, that's a past generation. Even my generation, I was born soon after the war, even my generation doesn't consider that we have a problem with Germany, that we have a problem with Russia. But the problem is that Germany doesn't aggress other countries in Europe, Russia does. Germany since 1945 hasn't aggressed any other country in Europe. In fact, has been incredibly pacifist. It's terribly difficult to get them to move and take a position in Europe, whether it was the Yugoslav wars or now the conflict with Russia. Well, Russia has invaded since 1945, Hungary 1956, Czechoslovakia 1969, Poland nearly happened in 1981. It didn't happen only because General Jaruzelski declared a state of emergency and blocked the whole country himself, so the Russians didn't have an excuse to come in. And then there's Chechnya, Georgia, Armenia, and all the countries around Russia. So Russia is an extremely aggressive country, and the atrocities it's committing, Europeans are not ready to forgive them and forget, simply because when they occupied Crimea in 2014, grabbing a piece of land a region which belonged to Ukraine, rightly or wrongly, that's another discussion, but they grabbed land which belonged to Ukraine illegally, and that was it. And Europe made a huge mistake, and the rest of the world made a huge mistake by not really taking a tough stance. There were sanctions, and their sanctions were soon. All is okay, we will still do commerce, etc. But the fact will send its gas and oil to India cheaply, very good. Let them send the gas. And China, of course, they will sell it to China and anybody else around the globe. The West does not have to put up and send a huge amount of money, because this is something I'd like to mention. I have a few figures on that. The amount of money we send daily to Russia, to Putin, is not just Russia, because we don't have a problem with Russia as people. We have a problem with a clique which is in power. It's staggering. And this money is used to buy weapons to try to attack us. It's not a simple issue.
When it comes to buying a weapon, I don't know how much it is true, because I also heard a news where Russia has approached China to help them with missiles because they don't have enough to fight this Ukrainian war.
Well, because probably much of it was stolen, they invested a lot of money in weaponry during the last several years, but probably it was spent inefficiently and some of it was stolen. Although they have these fantastic weapons, it shows in Ukraine, but not that army is not as fantastic as it looks.
No, I just wanted to mention that I may not agree on everything that you said, but it's not the right webinar or the right panel today. I have some arguments, and probably better to stick with the gas stuff.
Yeah, but we had discussions on this. The last two webinars have already been on the subject.
I know.
So we are also political. We're not just a friendly discussion group. We're also a political movement. We are also a think tank, and we do have a political position. And that political position is very clear. That aggression cannot go unchallenged and unforgiven. Okay, this is why.
No, there is no question about that. This aggression should be condemned. All the sanctions, perfectly all right. Perfectly all right. I'm only thinking, suppose Putin is away. Putin is gone. There is a new leader there. So can we go back and reinitiate all this pipeline, turn it on, and then?
Sure. We're best friends, no problem. But let's carry on. Let's go back to gas. Let's go back to energy, because we have a few.
I just want to remind also to Naidu and Piotr that the commercial war on gas started in 2021. So that just months or almost 1 year before the invasion, the aggression of Russia to Ukraine. That is to be condemned, but a war was already there and was initiated by, I would say, by the States, by the US, blocking Nord Stream 2. Good reasons behind, but the initiator was the block of the Nord Stream 2. Then we can, and this is the economic war, not military, no death, but
whenever there is a gas issue, we always find the US there.
well, let's not go there, all right? Let's not go there, because that's not the subject. Sorry, we're getting straying too far. I think Hilder has a question now, please.
Yeah, well, just to make a remark that the dispute on the gas started 2005, when Gazprom cut the gas to Ukraine. And that's why, for me, it's amazing how the Europeans didn't foresee this dependency shouldn't be a good strategy. But also I'm concerned because there's a Mr. Borrell, High Representative of the European Union, mentioned in these days that we need to close our heating at home to save energy. And then I'm concerned that probably next year, apart from the high prices, we will have a shortage of energy. Because even before all this war and all these problems, there were reports, for instance, in Switzerland, that they might have shortage in a few years if they didn't do something about it. For instance, we are seeing in South Africa, they are having daily shortage in many regions because, I'm not fully aware of the reality of South Africa, but the energy is really a problem. In Venezuela, for instance, they are also keep having shortage because, well, the government didn't maintain the infrastructure and didn't make investments. But, well, the energy is really a problem worldwide.
Yes, thank you, Hilder. I think we could perhaps, if there are no questions, because then there'll be a bit of discussion next, when we come to the conclusion, because there are staggering figures involved. The 10-point plan to reduce the European Union's reliance on Russian natural gas has been a very interesting document produced by the International Energy Agency. The measures implemented this year could bring down gas imports from Russia by over 1/3, with additional temporary options to deepen these cuts to well over half, while still lowering emissions. No new gas supply contract with Russia, seems obvious. Replace Russian supplies with gas from alternative sources. Introduce minimum gas storage obligations to enhance market resilience, because some countries in Europe have very good storage situation, and the storage is about 50% full. Other countries are nearly empty. because they neglected that aspect, or they were throttled by Russia, which was on purpose because they knew what they were facing. Action 4, accelerated deployment of new wind and solar projects. It seems so absolutely obvious that it shouldn't need saying. We should have been doing it non-stop for the last 10, 20 years. It's the cheapest solution and the fastest, because the day you put a field of solar panels or solar panels on your roof, they start producing, or the month after you put wind power generators, whether in the sea, where they don't bother anybody, or whether in the field, they start producing. You don't have to wait till 10 or 15 years, like I'm afraid, Renzo, with nuclear, which is, I think it's a good solution. It's a scary solution for some, but it's a good solution, but it also takes a lot of time. We'll not be ready next month.
Absolutely correct.
Action 5, maximize generation from existing dispatchable low emission sources, bioenergy and nuclear. In other words, there's countries that have still nuclear reactors, like Switzerland, Germany, which are phasing them out. Please put them back online. Don't throw them away. It's madness, not just for yourselves, but for the rest of Europe. Enact short-term measures to shelter vulnerable electricity consumers from high prices. This was a total no-no until recently. Was a total taboo saying we will help people until COVID, which broke the taboo that we should help people directly to survive most difficult moments. And this preserves society, because when people are hit by excessive price raises, unemployment, excessive social hardship, they turn to extremists. And this is where Putin wins, because Putin supports all the extreme right-wing, extreme left-wing parties, and he gains whatever people decide. Speed up the replacement of gas boilers with heat pumps. Again, it's a no-brainer. With the amount, we will look at the figures, with the amount of money we save on not buying gas and oil from Russia and coal, we could buy a heat pump for practically every citizen in Europe within the next 4 or 5 years. It's a no-brainer. It costs some money, but it's an extraordinary investment because it cuts down tremendously on our use of energy. Accelerate energy efficiency improvements in buildings and industry. Indeed, so many houses, and I have a quote from an English source, George Monbiot, a Guardian environmental columnist, so many houses are simply not insulated. People heat them, spend a tremendous amount of money on heating them, are still cold, waste a tremendous amount of energy because they're not insulated. Tony Blair offered money to help people who couldn't heat themselves at home because they didn't have the money and was too expensive. He offered money, but he also offered to improve their houses, to improve their insulation. Very few takers in the UK accepted to improve the insulation. They preferred the money to pay for the gas. They were not interested. Encourage a temporary thermostat adjustment by consumers. I have a heat pump, so I hope I don't have to do it because I suffer from cold. But yes, I will leave it there. I hate cold, but hey, if we have to, we have to. Step up efforts to diversify and decarbonize sources of power system flexibility. Decarbonize, eliminate the most polluting sources of energy, get your finger out. Everything costs money, but sometimes it costs more not to do it. The question we don't ask, the question I asked at work frequently was, this will cost us a lot of money to do, but how much will it cost not to do it? And we are finding out now, we're finding out today, we'll be finding out within the next several days and months that not investing in interconnections of the grids, of the pipelines, in heat pumps, in insulation of houses will pay through the nose, because we're already paying through the nose. And let's get, this is the quote from George Monbiot about the insulation. But this is a plea for renewable energies. Since the Russian invasion, the cost to produce wind energy has gone up $0. Dependency on Russia, 0%, and exactly the same for solar. There's no increase. It costs nothing. In fact, as you say, I put solar panels on my roof. Okay, they don't cover all my needs, not about 20% total during the day, and certainly when it's sunny, not during at night, but it's a small contribution and it costs me nothing. Once I paid for the panels, it cost me nothing. The energy itself is free and it will not go up. And now look how much money we give to this nice Mr. Vladimir. So this figure is the 2nd of March, we're sending him 660 million euros a day. How many? You said that Naidu said that one wind power generator costs €1 million. Well, think how many you could buy 660 a day with that kind of money. And then they produce energy for free for the next 10, 20, 30 years, okay? So 660 million euros a day, which could go up to 850 million euros a day because the price of energy is going up every single day. And what does it cost? 240 billion euros a year. Think about it, what you could do with 240 billion euros a year if we were not sending them to Mr. Putin. And just think about this for a minute. As we send 660 to perhaps 850 or more, because there's no limit, million euros a day on gas from Russia, we are paying daily a tribute to Putin's imperial Russia so that he can buy weapons which he will use to massacre and enslave us at a time of his choosing. 240 billions. You buy a lot of weapons for that kind of money. And it costs him very little to extract gas or oil. So most of it is profit, which, by the way, is kept by the oligarchs in Western Europe, or America, but that's another subject. That's a discussion about oligarchs. This is my hopeful conclusion, an illustration by Carl in the Economist, with Ukraine being followed by Russia, with trying to swallow it, but behind there, lots of barracudas trying to attack the big fish, Russia. Any questions after these interesting figures, after these scary figures?
If you could go back to the EIA 10 points, just very quickly to comment. The figures that you have from the wind, which is good, increasing the wind farm is few terawatt hours. If I remember well, it was about 34 terawatt hours. Is that correct? I don't remember exactly the number. It's that one is about 1% of the gas energy that we consume. 35 terawatt hours is less than 1% of the EU consumption in gas. So it's a good point. We have to increase that one, the renewable, but is 1%. Has to be clear about that. Another point is about heat pump. Yes, fine, but you need to have electric energy to run them, and you have to produce electricity. So it's a balance again. All these things are good actions, but no action is resolving. And at the end, what is written here is by 1/3 and not just replacing everything. Has to be very clear. It's not because I don't want to, but realistically, it would be quite difficult to get rid of. And because, as you said, building nuclear or even a solar farm or wind farm is not a matter of doing it over the week, over one day. It takes time, it takes permission, has to be connected to the grid. A lot of things have to be done before reducing the dependency on gas. Unfortunately, we were very short-sighted in the past years. Somebody mentioned, Elder, if I remember correctly, mentioned that the war was started in 2005, economic war, I mean, and no action was taken on that. And it's clear, it's true. So now we have to act, but we cannot expect to have a miracle now. This is the real point. We have to be quite realistic. Thank you, Piotr.
Yes, indeed. We are. The tragedy is that we are under the gun. Indeed, there is some hope with these actions, and there's some hope with these figures, but we are under the gun, literally under the gun. And frankly, the information I see among the experts is that Putin will not stop at Ukraine if we let him go to Ukraine. And that's why the Poles, who are so anti-EU, are now panicking. And I even saw an interview with the President Duda. The first time since 2015, I've seen a Polish president with a Polish flag in the middle, an EU flag, a NATO flag at the sides. They were virulently anti-EU, although they are desperately trying to get money from the EU. And suddenly they discover the virtue of the EU when it comes to being protected from a terrible neighbor from the East. And I know something about it because I'm also half Polish and I was born in Poland. And I know what terror Russia is for people who live in that part of the world. Helder, you were trying to say something.
Well, I just wanted to remark that, well, some of the solutions, so for instance, a solar panel require maintenance. A bird can destroy a solar panel and you have to replace it. Also, we have taxation issues, because at the beginning they were promoting this, but now they charge the CO2 tax, some other taxation, and it increases the price. And then probably we need to promote these systems with some fiscal incentives. That's will be a good part. As you mentioned, the heat pumps, despite that they're expensive, I think that is a very good solution that we need to promote more, and this fiscal incentive might help onto that. Regarding the windmills, the problem is that, well, also these require people controlling remotely these facilities. Sometimes they have problems and they stop working. On the spite of the wind that is intermittent, also you need to make investments to maintain this working, because I saw in many places that these windmills are stopped due lack of maintenance or technical problems. Also, we have an alternative with the wave. Install this in the middle of the ocean. I don't know how good it is for the nature and for the transport for the ships going around. But definitely, well, we need to also invest in research and development, because as you mentioned it before, Tesla have some alternative for accumulate the energy, but we need more solutions. We need new technologies to become cheaper to store the energy. The housing as well could be a very good idea, because if you have an insulated house, you will reduce your consumption. We need to look at the problem with different angles, make a strategy that involves all the variants that might increase or decrease the energy consumption. And we are seeing already, for instance, in Portugal, some companies are going to bankruptcy because the energy prices are so high that they are not able to afford the production. Either we will keep the incentive to keep them working, or how we will deal with this energy price that are skyrocket currently. We will have many industries, either the prices will increase a lot, or the companies won't be able to produce anymore for a reasonable price.
Hello, thank you. Solar panels destroyed by a bird. Well, even a bird crapping on top of a solar panel will not destroy all of its capacity. It would take a big bird to foul enough, or a big flock of birds sitting every day to foul enough a solar panel to reduce its capacity, but it's true. Then you can wash it with a kosher and that's it. It's as good as new. I have solar panels on my roof. I have lots of birds, unfortunately, but luckily they haven't destroyed my solar panels yet. You put solar panels on your roof and they start working an hour after installation. And that's a huge advantage. The investment is there, but it's not a huge investment and a lot of people can afford it. There are some subsidies for solar panels. What I find absolutely mad, for instance, I had installed a few months ago in Spain, is I don't want any subsidy. I had solar panels installed and I paid 21% VAT. Don't give me a 10% subsidy. Don't charge me tax. But it's rubbish talking about subsidies. The government is giving billions or hundreds of millions of euros in subsidies when you charge me. When I buy a heat pump, you'll charge me 21 or 22% VAT on it. When I try to insulate my windows, my doors, my whatever, you won't give me any money. My government won't give me any money. They'll charge me 22% VAT because a luxury product or whatever. It's madness. So stop taxing excessively. Charge me 5-10% because you need the tax. So perhaps let's stop talking about help for incentives for environment, but please stop taxing it like crazy, like electric cars, where electric cars are being charged at a rate which are more expensive, but they are charged at the rate like any luxury car because they go into the luxury bracket. So why do you give me 5,000 euros when you've charged me already 10,000 euros tax? Renzo, you're trying to say something.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree.
And as for wind power generators breaking down, I noticed that on every field, and there are lots around here, in every field there's one generator not functioning, probably kept as a spare. They kept sort of turning away from the wind and kept as a spare, whether in Spain or France or whatever. I've seen big fields of power generators, dozens and dozens all over the horizon. There's always every few are left as a spare. I presume they can kick into action when they're needed or for peak requirements. As for price of renewable energy is the cheapest. Long-term contracts signed with renewable energy providers are the cheapest, simply because energy, photovoltaic, wind energy will not increase from one day to the next. If there is instability on the market, it will be the same price. Yes, it's unstable. Yes, it comes and goes, but you can compensate for it with the grid. But the price, it actually lowers, because once you've invested in the equipment, you have to invest the equipment over the next 5, 10, 20 years. But the price is always the same, identical, except for the maintenance and the transport. That's it. Our penny pinching, and again, I come back to not how much it's costing us to install renewable energies, how much it's costing us not to install renewable energies, how much it's costing us not to invest in relatively clean, relatively safe nuclear energy. I'm not a great fan of nuclear energy, but I think at the moment we are really screwed because we don't have enough nuclear energy.
But also I would like to add that the liberation of the energetic market in Europe was a big lie. Because when they open it, electrical markets, for instance, they say, well, you can put a solar panel in your house, the excedent of energy, you can put it back into the network, or you can put a solar wind in your backyard. But that didn't happen. We are not the consumers. We are able to produce energy, but we are not feeding the grid. Then I do not understand why they promise that and in the practice is not happening.
Well, actually, my energy goes back to the grid. The little excess energy I produce when I'm producing, let's say, 2-3 kilowatts, and I'm using only 400-500 kilowatts, some of it goes to the grid, but is compensated at something like 2 cents per kilowatt. They buy energy from me at 2 cents per kilowatt, and I pay 20, 30, 40 cents per kilowatt, depending on the level, whether it's peak tariff during the day or not. But I get perhaps 110 for 120 for what I get charged. So it's not exactly very encouraging, but I do it because I believe I like having a solar panel. And if the grid is cut, well, I still have a little bit of power. So any other questions, any other subjects coming up before we close down? We have quite a long session.
Quick question from my side. Do you plan to have a session, maybe you already had in the past, I'm not sure, about the cost and value and price of energy?
That's a very good point. If you want to suggest a session like this.
We discussed a lot about prices, about volatility of markets. I think that could be interesting in the future to have this kind of discussion.
Would you like to host it?
Oh, let's discuss about that.
Okay, well, let's talk about it.
Yeah, good.
It sounds very interesting because energy actually attracts quite a lot of interest in our group, as you can see across the world. Indeed, yes. Let's keep in touch on that. I'll be very happy to discuss it.
Sorry for interrupting, but I think Naidu.
Sorry.
No problem.
Naidu, please go ahead.
Feel free to discard this topic if it is not in line with what we are talking or what we're discussing today. While we are, I don't know, to put it bluntly, can I say that we are in this situation because of some lobbying by the energy companies to the governments across the countries in Europe? Because
well, frankly, no. I disagree vehemently with you. I'm not into conspiracy theories. There is a huge conspiracy, and we've seen the results of this conspiracy is on the side of Moscow. I don't buy conspiracy theories about. Yes, of course, lobby. Lobbies are trying to make money. They're always trying to make money, but they didn't get us into this war because of that. No.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's clear. Thank you.
Okay. You won't convince me.
On that, but at least I would like to separate the the war in Ukraine, which has to be condemned, no discussion about that, from the economical war, which is happening at the same time, but the costs are not, the high prices of gas are not driven by war in Ukraine. You can see the graph, and there is no correspondence at all. But okay, this is my opinion, and
but there's a very good point. The economic elements, there's always rivalry. There's always a bit of an economic war, but also Russia has been throttling supplies of gas for several months now, building up the prices because they've been reducing. There's no particular reasons why they should be doing. For several months now, for probably a year or more, they've been throttling the supply of gas. The pipelines were not working at full capacity. That's why so many countries are caught with low reserves, because they're simply not supplying enough to build up their reserve, because they knew what they were going to do. And in the meantime, they also made a lot of money by throttling, because the less gas you provide, the more you pay for it. So we're stupid that we buy still the gas, but we have no choice, and it doesn't look that we'll have choice anytime soon. So to conclude, well, thank you very much to all, and hopefully see you soon. And thank you for participating. Good night to all.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
And
See you
don't
later.
forget the feedback form,
Okay.
please. Don't forget the feedback.
Thank you, Piotr. See you. Bye.
Thank
Good
you.
night, darling.
Bye.